Hey, folks, thanks for joining me for this episode of the Embellish Podcast, a podcast focused on product stories, product storytellers, interesting brand ambassadors, and anything else that I happen to come up with. Whether you're a bourbon fan, a geek, a casual observer, or someone just floating through this channel, I hope you find what I have to say interesting. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully, I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com, and I'll try to get that taken care of. I also generally live stream the recording of these episodes on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or Twitter with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's also a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today is Sunday, November the 27th. We are the Sunday directly after Thanksgiving, and we're going to be talking about turkey myths and storytelling and a host of other things. Thanksgiving is a curious holiday to celebrate for every non-indigenous person to this particular continent. This holiday is a celebration of our arrival and eventual domination of native tribes to create kind of a new space for us. We've been taught for eons that the first Thanksgiving was one of peace and sharing, but given what we have subsequently learned as adults, it's probably not near the truth. Now, all of that's a little bit heavy for what I normally do here. So we'll talk about a couple of turkey myths that may or may not be true, and how the power of story is what really matters. And when we began on this journey, that was sort of what I really kind of got stuck on, is that the power of the story, the product storytelling, the brand storytelling, or just storytelling in general, is often far more important, impactful, and sticky than any truthfulness. And so the story is better regardless of its veracity. And I mean, I think you could see that in just American culture in general and how we do things. And so we'll start with some low hanging ones, and then we'll move our way towards a couple of other things. And we can't do anything without finishing, especially this is the Thanksgiving weekend edition. Finishing by talking about wild turkey specifically. Tonight we're going to drink on some Bond and Lillard. That's the batch 2 that I've still got a little bit of that floating around, so we'll drink on that while we talk tonight, and have some conversation about wild turkey. See what happens here. So we'll start with food. Turkey specifically. For a long time, we've had this conversation around tryptophan, and tryptophan being in turkeys being the thing that causes you to be super sleepy, to the point to where, and I kind of did a little bit of research and tried to find the origins of this story, and it's not really clear, but it's popular enough that even in the early 90s, there's an episode of Seinfeld where, if I remember correctly, George and Jerry are trying to get one of their girlfriends to eat a bunch of turkey and drink a little bit of wine, to the point to where she gets sleepy, so they can play with a vintage toy collection. There's apparently a really big vintage toy collection that they're interested in playing with. They think if they can get her to fall asleep, then they can go do that. And so it's been around for a while, at least long enough to be a part of pop culture at that point in time. But the reality is, so tryptophan is an amino acid. It's an essential amino acid. And yes, it is present in turkey. Usually the human body will make serotonin from tryptophan, and melatonin as well, which are going to have soothing effects. However, to get enough tryptophan in your system to kind of lull you to sleep, you'd have to consume pure tryptophan, which is not going to be what's in turkey to begin with, at significantly higher doses than what's actually in turkey, to be able to kind of get that particular impact. And what the reality is that likely what's happening is a couple of different things. If you're getting sleepy on Thanksgiving Day, even if you didn't eat turkey, it's coming from either carb loading. You eat a ton of bread and stuffing and potatoes and all of these different things that are going to generate that, or you significantly overeat. And if you significantly overeat, burning calories becomes a function for your body, and your body will try to get you to sleep, so that way it can focus on kind of one thing. So likely your Thanksgiving nap is going to come directly from more from overconsumption than anything to do with turkey. Then there's this other piece, if you're going to eat turkey, you got to eat the white meat because it's healthier for you than the dark meat is. And it's true that Boneless, skinless white meat is going to contain fewer calories and fat than boneless, skinless dark meat. But the nutritional differences between the two, the actual nutritional differences between the two, are very, very small. Dark meat is going to offer more nutrients, B vitamins, iron, so forth. And so if you're looking at straight caloric intake, then white meat's the way to go. But if you're looking for actual enrichment, whatever it is, dark meat. And the reality is that um, if we're talking about Thanksgiving, you're probably not super concerned with either of those things because you're eating a whole lot of trash. Um, and even eating turkey for Thanksgiving, it's real weird, because if we're trying to celebrate the first Thanksgiving, or at least the genesis of Thanksgiving, they probably weren't eating turkey. There's probably going to be more like fish and game birds like geese. While pumpkin was probably present, the idea of pies and sweet potatoes aren't there either. So like Thanksgiving as a whole, the way we consume food, the way we do things is a little bit different. And then immediately following Thanksgiving, you have Black Friday, and if you're an North American consumer, you know exactly what that is. And the name Black Friday is one of those things that nobody really can explain the origins of it, kind of where it came from. For most of my life, I've always understood it to mean that it is the day when most retailers are going to start going into the black for profitability. And so if they look at from November to the end of the year, all of the money that they make in that time frame is going to be pure profit. And so that's sort of kind of the understanding I've had. But the reality is, it was first referenced in a newspaper article in 1951, and it didn't refer to anything regarding shopping. It actually was um, a day when numerous employees were going to be calling in sick. So Black Friday was a day whenever there's a lot of folks calling in, whether it be from Thanksgiving holiday or whatever. And then later on, it was used in Philadelphia to refer to giant crowds and traffic jams that resulted from post Thanksgiving shopping. Um, and then the idea of it referencing stores being in the black, or at least being profitable, didn't appear in the media until the 90s. So it's already been in common vernacular for a very long time by the time it hits that point. And so the idea that Black Friday is this, consumeristic holiday is exactly what it is now, but um, kind of the history of it is a little bit questionable. And we've always sort of accepted these things, is that turkey makes you sleepy, and that white meat is better than dark meat, and that Black Friday refers to what's on a ledger balance more than anything else. And those things are largely not true. And so then we'll kind of get to this other myth that exists around turkeys. And maybe there's this myth, whether it's true or untrue, that Benjamin Franklin was a proponent. Whenever we're sitting a national bird, he was a proponent of using the wild turkey. And what ended up happening was the bald eagle. And so we'll start with, how do we get the bald eagle, and then we'll kind of dovetail into Benjamin Franklin's take on whether it should have been the wild turkey or something else. It would be real curious to be eating a wild turkey, but also have it be the national bird. But how do we end up with a bald eagle? To start with, the bald eagle and its role as a national symbol is linked to the 1782 Great Seal of the United States. Sometime after the Declaration of Independence was signed, the Continental Congress gave three folks the job of designing an official new seal for the new nation. So we've got Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams. The three founding fathers absolutely did not come up with a design that Congress would approve, and two more committees were given the task, and none of them did it either. And so the idea that we're even looking at a bald eagle on a seal as a sign of the new nation didn't come from those three folks to begin with. And so we fast forward to the designs, the work that all three of the committees had handed over to Charles Thompson, Secretary of Congress. He chose the best elements, which he sort of thought were the best elements, and kind of put those into play. and it was partially a design from the third committee. But the reality of it is that Benjamin Franklin actually was interested in nothing about birds at all. That had more to do with biblical references and a couple of other different things. And so the original design that came out of that third committee actually had a small white eagle in it, and it got when it got replaced, it got put in with a bald eagle. Um, it goes into official documents, currency flags, public buildings, a handful of other places as well. Became a huge American icon, and then we kind of fast forward to this time where the bald eagle is going to face extinction. And this is really, really curious. I guess maybe it's kind of indicative of how society was in the late 1800s. But we get into the late 1800s, we have 100,000 nesting bald eagles. And you get down to the point to where there were 400 breeding pairs left in the United States due to habitat destruction and hunting. And so there were people still hunting what we would consider to be a national bird at that point in time. And that's sort of curious, the idea that there's this national bird, but there are people out there hunting it and then eating it. I guess it kind of goes back to that idea of, if the wild turkey had been named that, we may still be eating our national bird as well. So then we, in 1978, we put the bald eagle on the endangered species list. It's federal protections come into play. Some regulations around DDT, which was a huge habitat destructor for bald eagles. In 95, we got off of the endangered and got into threatened. And then in 2007, it was completely removed from the list. However, it hasn't been reintroduced into wildlife management in the way they historically have been. So this is how we get to the bald eagle. But we go back to Benjamin Franklin. And so Benjamin Franklin was given the task with John Adams and Thomas Jefferson to kind of design a seal. And he never suggested a turkey, right? And so that's kind of the myth that exists, is that Benjamin Franklin was a proponent of the turkey over the bald eagle. And what he actually proposed was Moses standing on the shore and extending his hand over the sea, causing the sea to overwhelm the Pharaoh, who was sitting in an open chariot. And the motto was going to be, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." And if you study the history of the United States, at least since its inception as a formalized nation, we're really kind of a war tribe here. Like all we do is really sort of fight. We're involved in war. I think I remember hearing a statistics that we've been involved in warring for 95% of the existence of this nation, whether it be a war we're fighting or someone else. But this makes sense. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. The committee selected a scene from the book of Exodus. They put it on here. The Continental Congress didn't like it. They tabled it. And then, like I said, in 1782, the bald eagle kind of makes it there. Now, where we get the credence behind the idea that Benjamin Franklin was a proponent of the turkey being the national symbol actually comes from some American newspapers that were published around the time of the country's centennial, based around 1784 or whatever. He penned a letter which talked about the eagle and extolled the virtues of the daughter of the turkey to his daughter Sarah. Basically, what he was doing was he wasn't delivering a critique of the new seal, but of there was a society of Cincinnati that was using a metal of some type, and he was criticizing that, and he basically indicated that he wished that the bald eagle had never been chosen as a representative for the country. It had more to do with the way that the bald eagle acts as a bird of prey. He considered it a bird of bad moral character. It doesn't give its living honestly. It steals food from other places. Sometimes it's too lazy to fish for itself. He talks about the turkey being a more respectable bird, true original native of America. And that's another kind of big thing to kind of hinge on there. And he considered the eagle to be a rank coward. But the reality of it is that he did not publish any of this publicly. This was in, a private letter between himself and his daughter. Um, and realistically, his ideas centered around biblical concepts, not birds. And so he was more of just a criticism of what existed out there, and kind of poking holes in the idea that we shouldn't have used a bald eagle as our design. And so if we go back to this thing, and I've heard it for a very, very long time. The Benjamin Franklin wanted the bald eagle to be the national bird. Wasn't exactly the truth. And so we've kind of hammered through a series of largely untrue myths that exist: tryptophan, white meat versus dark meat, the kind of meals that might have been consumed, the bald eagle versus the turkey. And then we talk about something that's more important to anyone who's probably listening to this, is the idea of the story behind Wild Turkey, the brand. And you likely already know this. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube, you likely already know this story. But Austin Nichols and Company was a large wholesale grocery business in New York State. When Prohibition happened, they had a unique opportunity for when Prohibition ended to be a perfect channel to be able to buy, bottle, and sell distilled spirits. Is a huge wholesale grocery business, and so they partnered with the Rippies and they built a distillery. It would eventually produce a number of different brands, including Wild Turkey. Kind of create a master distiller, and then you get into the 40s, right? And so we're talking in 1933, we're starting to kind of push around distilled spirits. But in 1940, I guess maybe the godfather or the founder of Wild Turkey becomes a guy named Thomas McCarthy. And he took a barrel of the Rippy bourbon, along with two of his brothers, on a hunting trip in North Carolina. And during that trip, they had a bunch of different distributors that were there, including Austin Nichols. And McCarthy was using the whiskey to entertain hunters and talk to people. And basically, the whiskey that came out of the barrel was smooth and spicy, 101 proof. Everyone on the trip, just kind of like raved about the taste, just talked about it. And basically the idea of the brand was born. However, it wasn't really formalized probably until, I think 1942. And then Austin Nichols, sells off the grocery chain, concentrates in the spirits business. And then Nichols gets picked up by, I can't remember the name of the company, but, eventually you end up under the umbrella of Campari. But is that story entirely true? It's widely held to be the truth. And it's, I guess, near enough in history for us to sort of more wildly accept that as reality. So, here's some, I guess, some Thanksgiving trivia, some things that you can kind of ponder over, kind of what's happening there. So, let me see, what do we have coming up? We're gonna have some folks joining us. I'm gonna have some people coming up real soon. We've got an interview with one of the representatives from the New Orleans Bourbon Festival, which is coming up in the spring. An opportunity to just kind of talk through what they've got going on at that particular event. It's one of those events that I've always been interested in, and listening to people kind of talk about. It looks like a fun event. I've been to New Orleans a handful of times, love the city. I guess, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 times, can't remember at this point. Old 55 Distillery will be joining us. Hopefully sometime in December, I can get the fellows from Nelson's Greenbrier on, the Nelson brothers. And then hopefully we'll pick up Blue Note. Blue Note, BR Distilling, I think is what the distilling company is. Actually sent me a sample of their Blue Note Crossroads, which is their French oak bourbon that they have, and I'm really excited to talk to them about that particular offering. It's pretty fantastic, and a handful of other things that I'm working on. We'll see what happens before the end of the year. May have a fun roundtable offering, may have some other unique conversations that are coming along. But I'll be traveling the next couple of weeks. I'm trying to build up a backlog of things. So we'll have probably a couple of shorter episodes that will get pushed out and published. But hope you guys are enjoying this. Like I said, I love doing the interviews, but they take a little bit more time. And if you have a family, if you're, kind of off doing things. One other thing. Yeah, hopefully we'll have Dixon Deadman on sometime in December as well. We tentatively agreed to do this in December so we can talk about his 2XO offering. Um, was able to pick up a bottle of that from a friend of mine, a friend of the podcast, a friend of a series of podcasts. Was able to snag a bottle and send it my way via hand delivered courier. It was a super, super big help. So hopefully we'll have that on, and that might get us through the end of the year and kind of see what happens. Got some collaborative things that I want to work on in the new year. May take a couple of weeks off after January just to kind of see what happens, because this is, I've consistently put something out every week for about 2 years now. Maybe it's time to take a little bit of a break, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, so that's all I've got for tonight. It's a relatively quick episode. So thanks for tuning in for this offering from the Embellish podcast. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform that you have to be consuming this on. Leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media at Twitter or Instagram using EmbellishPod, or give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, and so forth. And I'll be back again next week with another new offering for you. So until then, cheers and thanks for hanging out.